Your Soul Scripts presents Conversations with Your Higher Self. This is a special edition on psychic protection and negative entities. And today we're going to be talking with Morgane Olivia. She is a shaman, a medium, a transformation catalyst. Morgane's passion is to help spiritual beings heal traumas and reclaim their power so they can go from hopeless to empowered. Hi, Morgane. How are you? Thank you
Hi,
for being here.
Alleson. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your invitation. Very happy to do this.
Yes, and Morgane, if you can't tell, is in France.
By my accent, I'm
Beautiful
trying to
accent. It's
get
so
rid of.
beautiful. I
Thank you.
love France, by the way.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
but let's talk a little bit about negative entities. Like, let's start with the basics. Give me your definition of an entity versus maybe a psychic attack.
Okay, so there are different types of entities. So you have the good one. I don't. In what I'm going to say, there is no judgment, okay? Like it's more like
Absolutely.
high vibrational, low vibrational, and we live in a world of duality. So you have the polar opposites. So you have the high vibrational entities that could be your spirit guides, and usually we refer to them as angels or spirit guides or helpers. And then you have the other type of entities that are disembodied souls as well, but they are a little bit lower in vibration, and they are not always having humanity's or humans' highest good at heart. So you have different types of entities. You have the ones who are harmless, meaning they don't mean any harm, but if they attach to you, it can still harm you, even if they don't mean to harm you. So that's the lost souls, the trapped souls. They are trapped in lower dimensions, or for example, a deceased loved one who cannot really cross over because of the guilt of leaving their loved ones on earth and seeing their grieving for their absence. There are also some that are not realizing that they don't have a physical body anymore, in case of sudden death, for example. So they might be trapped in between worlds. But they are not going to try and harm. They just need food on their plane of existence, so they're going to attach to living beings or places to just be able to survive. And then on the other hand side, you have the more, let's say, the darker entities who are literally thriving on low vibrational energies like fears, grief, sadness, resentment, all these emotions that are considered negative. But I always say negative is just a vibration and something that doesn't serve your highest good. But there is no judgment, because in society sometimes, I mean often, it's like, oh, negative equals bad. But I remove any judgment here. It's very important for me to really say this, because even when I come across a demon, the key is to not feed the demon the same energy as they are sending to you. Because if they are like lashing hatred or anger or something out on you, if you reply in the same way, you are giving them power. You are feeding them with the same vibration. So you always want to stand in love and power. It doesn't mean you are like, oh yes, demon, I love you. Not always, like you just need to stand firmly. And what I always say to anyone I work with who have this kind of experience, they only have the power that you give to them. So if you decide that you are scared of them, then you are scared and you give them power. So
It's
you
kind of
feed
like
them.
food. Yeah, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, yeah, you have power over me. I'm powerless. You are bigger than me. I acknowledge that I'm smaller than you, so I'm your victim. And you don't want to do that at all. There is nothing to fear from negative entities, like dark entities. I know it sounds weird, but let me explain. It's more like if they wanted to kill us, they would have already, right? So there is nothing to fear in the sense that they have to respect cosmic laws, universal laws, the law of free will. And they're going to try to trick to get to contract and things like that. But the key is to really stand strong and know how they work so that you can always use them to your advantage. And this is something I'm really big about, is that the dark side doesn't like love, obviously. And I always say the opposite of love is not hatred. To me, the opposite of love is fear, and hatred is a byproduct of fear. That's what I believe in. That's what you always fear, you always hate something that you fear, right? So where was I going with that?
Well, how would you banish a demon with love?
I don't really call it banishing a demon. I call it compassionate depossession, because you just, it's about standing in your power and seeing what is behind. Why is this demon there? There is a reason for the demon to be there. It might come from a past life where some contracts took place or some rituals took place. And then there was like an agreement, or it can also be a trick during trauma or during a party when someone is drunk. This is just an example. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it is a possibility. Or when someone is high, contracts are made. And then subconsciously, the human allows the being in their field. But sometimes you can also be facing a random attack. Like, for example, in some specific buildings that are supercharged in energies, like in a cemetery, for example, or in a church, or something like that, where there are a lot of sorrow, you know. I mean, not everywhere, because in some countries, churches are happy places. But in some places, you know, like especially, I'm going to talk about what I know. In France, it's really sadness around death. And I mean, it's normal, but for our culture, it's normal. So there is a lot of, you know, entities praying around to attach to people who are really suffering from losing someone, for example, during funerals or something like that. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. So what are some other situations where people might attract these negative entities? You mentioned alcohol and drugs, and, you know, low vibration. Some buildings sometimes hold these entities. What's their purpose? Is it just to feed off of us?
Yes, they need energy. So the trapped soul some just need help. So they're just going to attach and hope that one day they see a portal open and they can cross over, or meet a psychopomp who can just give a prayer and help them transition. But when we're talking about the really, really dark side, their role is to, or their goal, should I say, is more to keep us in fear and thrive on this, to feed themselves off and like thirst for power. And usually they work for bigger names of entities, you know, like yeah.
So they're kind of like gangs, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know if you've heard the word gang stalking. A lot of people, a lot of humans are gang stalked, actually.
Wow.
And
explain that. How does that?
So gang stalking, it might sound crazy to some, but I've had several clients experience this, and I've been facing this at some point around me. Gang stalking. Okay, I'm gonna try to make it short. When we are born, we have a team of light, guardian angels, guides, you name it. But as we live in a world of duality, equally there are beings who are trying to prey on us, like the light and the dark. And those beings know exactly which baby is going to be born when. And some bloodlines are more targeted than others. And this is something I have noticed it really came to me in a more obvious way in 2017. When I really I had already started studying that, and I was like, it sounds familiar. And then I met this lady who called me, and she actually called me in 2016, but she wasn't ready to do the work yet. So she called me back like early 2017. I'm getting lost in the date, maybe end of 2016, doesn't matter. And she was explaining to me what she was going through. And actually, it sounds crazy, but it's like everything she would try, there would always be someone who would mess it up for her indirectly. It's like her neighbors or children coming back from school and throwing stones in her windows, all kind of thing. Like her computer would just act crazy, like it would be hacked. One day she was actually by her window and she thought it was an insect, but it was a drone, like a miniature drone, flying around, spying on her, putting all kinds of thoughts in her head through implants. Yeah, and one day I went to her place and I was just sitting there, and she had animals, but all the animals were sleeping on one corner, because I felt, and I saw something and felt something, because my legs were crossed and I felt something close to my foot, and I was talking to her. So I was like, my reflex was to watch because I thought it was one of her animals. But no, they were all sleeping peacefully. And I saw this black mass, like black smoke type of thing in the corner of my eye. And that was an entity. So basically, we did some work, and it was like that time was in June, and then I met her again in August because she wanted to see me again, but she didn't want, she couldn't have me in her house. So we met at the parking lot close to her house. She just wanted to update me quickly. And actually she wanted to give, because she's an artist, and she wanted to give me a piece of art that she created. So I was very, very touched. And just for the story is that I knew how she looked because I had met her before. But in 3 months' time, she was standing in the parking lot and I hadn't recognized her. She was a totally different person. Like her face was much brighter. She was wearing makeup. She was taking care of herself again. So because she understood that she was not crazy, she was not making that up, she saw that someone could understand her and help her cut some cords. And there was, in addition to that, there was also a curse on her family side, so there was something on top of it. So that's what gang stalking is just when sometimes it can also be some brotherhoods or sisterhoods or secret societies that are also hunting from past life things.
Wow.
So I hope it's making sense, because it's such a deep topic and vast, and I hope I'm explaining it, I'm trying to condense everything.
Morgane, you're doing a fabulous job. The thing I'm very curious about is that insect drone, and you mentioned implants. What was that all about?
Okay, so there are different types of implants, and I really started coming across implants in 2015 or 2016. I studied Reiki. Okay, I was awakened to myself in 2009, learning that I was a medicine woman and things like that. But I was an executive. I was having a busy work life. So I would never have thought I would make this my job one day, just to situate the situation. And then made redundant, shareholders went bankrupt. Long story short, I decided to open my business and dedicate my life to helping others. So I decided to learn Reiki. And so I was just, the beginning, I was just, going in person. Sometimes I would do distance as well, just putting my hands on, the body. And I would find myself looking for something. It's like something was telling me to look for something in the body, like with my mind's eye, obviously. And I would sometimes feel things and remove things. What is that? So I did some researches, and it's like reading some things were awakening, and I was remembering these things that were already in me, but I had to awaken them. Oh. So these little things that I was removing from people's energy field were implants. And implants are usually some types of nanotechnology. They are etheric implants, but you can also have physical ones, but that's a whole other story. I'm just going to mention about the etheric ones. So it's basically nanotechnology and artificial intelligence that are not from this plane of existence, that are placed into people's etheric field, energy field, to prevent awakening, to keep humanity or some humans in a loop. So for example, I'm just going to give an example of what some implants can be. Sometimes you have some in the throat, and it is linked to a little, whatever you want to refer to as inside the head or inside the brain or inside the third eye, pineal gland. And they're going to be linked. So it's like a frequency copier, like it's going to copy, this thing is going to copy your inner voice, and it's going to implant thoughts linked to entities and beings, and it's going to implant dark thoughts in your mind. And because it has your frequency, you're going to think that these pardon my French, bullshit thoughts are yours, but they are not. So it can be like I don't know, just like for example, any false belief that was developed in childhood from trauma. I am not good enough. Let's just take this example. I'm not good enough. The voice in your head that you think is yours is going to be like, oh, you suck. Just like, oh, I'm useless. I'm just a piece of whatever. This kind of self-negative thought and self-negative talk, sometimes it's not you. You think it's you, but it's not you. So this is a type of implant. Sometimes I see shackles as well in the ankles. These are more to anchor humans in lower frequencies, because we have even if we are in this realm, you have different frequency band and different octaves. So sometimes it's just to prevent the ascension and keep humans in a loop, like in a mental prison, basically. So at some point you believe that you're crazy or that you have mental disorder. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not doing any diagnosis or anything like that. So I always say, if any other symptoms, disease or condition, or however you want to call them, have been excluded with your practitioner, like legal doctor, certified doctor, have been excluded, then maybe you want to consider this. I am legally obliged to say this. So sometimes working on this from a spiritual perspective, energy perspective, can help, because there is nothing wrong with the person. It's just things that are in the body that have nothing to do there. And when you remove them, then you just realize that there is silence in your mind. And it's like there is noise in your head. You don't realize because it's usual. And then when you remove them, it's just like, oh, wow, just like silence and peace. And it's much easier to get control of your ego after that.
What is your process for removing them?
Well, I do this, I go in a trance and I really go deep. And then I visualize the body, the hologram of the body. I've been working with holograms since, I didn't even know it was a hologram. It just naturally, that's what I was doing when I was working with my hands on someone's physical body. I was always picturing the person like a human body, basically the shape of a human body in my head. And I'm just scanning through and checking. If I see something, I just remove it. So I have different techniques, remove them like that, or just call upon, different shades of lights, and higher frequencies. And I just remove them and I make sure that they're not going to come back, because sometimes it's linked to a contract, like I was saying, or a vow, so, or an oath, or whatever it may be. So I also make sure to break the thing, because if I remove an entity and there is a contract in place, then the entity is going to go away, but the door will still be open. So I need to close the door so that it doesn't come back. And the client needs to be really, really mindful, because after such a session, like in case of entities, for example, they're going to try to come back and give symptoms like before. So that's when the client really has to be mindful and be very, very present with themselves, because that's why they have to be really involved in their process. And I always make this analogy, like if you hire a fitness coach who is responsible for giving you a diet and making you exercise and think, and then you decide to eat 3 hamburgers and 2 buckets of ice cream, it's not the coach's fault, like the fitness coach fault. Like you can have all the exercises and all the diet instructions that you want, but if you choose to go back to your old habit, then what can the coach do, right? So, of course, there are instructions and everything, but the client in question really, or the human in question really needs to be ready to get over that. And it can be difficult. It can be difficult because as humans, we can get addicted to the self-punishment, because we cannot, we could, but sometimes it's a very, very hard, deep work, not hard, deep, let's say deep. And everything start to come back at the same time. So you really, really have to be present and committed to yourself. To be like, no, and we all have addictions to an extent, and by addiction, I'm not necessarily talking about alcohol or cigarettes or food. It can also be like self-harm, mental self-harm, emotional abuse. I'm sure everyone on this planet has at least abused themselves emotionally by, oh, this song is making me very sad and it reminds me of this love story that has ended. Let's put it on repeat. Abusing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
When you really feel sad and you just, let's torture myself a little bit more.
Yeah.
We have all done that, let's be honest, right? As teenagers or
Yep.
So this is a form of addiction to abuse, because when we go through sadness, trauma, or something like that, there is this, we feel dead inside and there is a void. So we try to fill the void by any way we can, and it becomes an addiction. So the addiction is not as much to the substance, it's more to fill in the void, because otherwise we would all have the same addiction, right? If it was the addiction to one substance, but it's just the feeling of feeling alive, actually. So the fact that you are in pain, and I'm keeping the example of the music, that the sad song that you play over and over, the pain is so big that even if you feel dead inside, you feel alive when you feel those emotions, as painful as they are. because then there is an addiction to the chemicals as well that are released in the brain. And as it is also embedded in the energy field, you attract what you emit, right? So it's just an endless cycle and circle. So it's really about being aware. And that's also very important for me to teach about that, because like I say, you really want people to free themselves and know what is going on. And I always say awareness is key, but understanding is the icing on the cake. Because if you have an awareness of something, that's wonderful. But then if you understand your process and why you react or act like this or like that, then you have all the solution in your hand to be like, shit, no, I'm not going to go there. You know, like, I got this.
Yeah. Wow. So you had mentioned, or maybe I just picked up on it somewhere else, curses. Can people, like, could I, not that I want to do this, or could somebody throw a curse on me, like another living person? Can they do that and send negativity your way, or negative entities your way, or how does that work? And how do you release that?
There are several ways that someone can curse someone else. There are very, very gross ways that I don't really want to get into because it's very gross, but it involves blood.
Oh,
You know, like so, some women use their period blood to cast spells. And I've heard a lot of stories like that. I lived in Jamaica, and it's big over there, like the spell thing. They are very, very aware of that. You can also, and this has been coming a lot with my clients, food. Like, you eat from someone, and the person will be like, oh no, go ahead, eat. I snacked when I was preparing the food, so I'm good, just eat. Don't trust. Ooh. Because it's like something's going on. And I've had a lot of clients, and even my best friend got this experience. So this is, that they do something in the food, like curse the food, and then you eat the food and it just feels something is off. And usually, because you want to be polite, you force yourself to eat it. And that's tricky. There can also be spells without necessarily wanting to. And we can also curse ourselves with words, because words are spells, right? You spell words. So if, for example, a false belief can become a spell at some point. Like, if you are raised with the false belief, I am not self-confident, then you're not even going to realize that you are not self-confident, or you think you're not self-confident. You just take it as your truth. And then you're just going to prevent yourself from doing things just because you are not self-confident. So it's like a curse to yourself. So it's a minor type of curse, but this is also a form of curse. Yeah. So how to remove that, you were asking?
Yeah.
So in a session, it's the same. I go in a trance, and usually I will see something, or if the person describes to me some situation, we go there. And sometimes it comes from a past life. Apologies. And it can be okay. I had a case of a client who was stalked lifetime after lifetime by the same soul. And in this incarnation, this woman was stalking her. So we went in a session. We're like, okay, please show us the first point in time when it started. We went deep, and I'm going to make a long story short, but basically the stalker had made a pact with Lucifer himself. That this person was jealous of my client, right? So she made a pact with the dark side, saying, oh, I want to be beautiful, and like my neighbor, and in exchange, whatever, I will just bring you some energy, or I will bring you her soul. And that's also how sacrifices can be made in the extreme cases. So in this example, we really battled in that session, and at the end, I'm like, okay, you're just gonna do this. So we went back to this lifetime, so back in time, and I was telling her, okay, you do this, you say this sentence, and then she was like, yeah, but Lucifer just appeared. I say, yeah, I know, it's all fine. And it's like Lucifer didn't give a about my client, because what Lucifer wanted was for the neighbor in question, the lady, the stalker in question, to fulfill her contract with him. So now that my client was taking her power back and not accepting that she would be stalked anymore, like really confronting the neighbor, Lucifer was just waiting basically for the neighbor to be like, yeah, okay, so you made a contract with me, now do something about it, fulfill your contract. And then she was like, yeah, but it's like there is a fire or whatever the situation was. I'd say, you did your job. It's none of your business anymore. Your business, your responsibility was to rebalance the imbalance that was in you. So you let her deal with the contract for her highest good. And then and Lucifer was basically chilling, like just okay, like stay away. And so that's how it works. That's what I really have experienced, and since then she's been fine.
Have you had any experience, like this is what I've heard and seen a little bit of, people, spiritual practitioners in the community that perhaps are offering advice to people and helping them as they go through the awakening process, might get some sort of entity or attachment. How can people discern or figure out if somebody that they're following might have that attachment to them, and how might that present itself?
Do you mean if a potential client want to choose a practitioner, or sorry?
Yes.
Okay. So it's very important to ask, and this is always what I say to my followers and in my Telegram group. Always make sure to ask, if you want to work with someone, make sure to ask if they practice spiritual hygiene. If they get pissed off, run away. If they ask you what spiritual hygiene is, careful. And if they ignore you or shame you, run away as well. It is normal to ask these questions, and it is very important to really trust your gut, because sometimes you might not resonate with the practitioner, even if there is no entity in question, like involved. You might just not resonate, and it's okay. We all have our vibration and things like that. But in case of I have another example. I have a client who went to a shaman, and she did a soul retrieval on her, like the shaman did a soul retrieval on my client. And my client had been feeling funny after. So she told me, well, I've been feeling a little bit weird since I had this session. I had a soul retrieval done with someone else, and which is fine. I mean, she's totally allowed to. And something felt off, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to sound or come across as like, oh, you went somewhere else, so I'm upset, because I truly was not. So I just asked questions. I asked her, so okay, when she reintegrated your soul fragment, did she cleanse it before? And my client was like, I'm not sure. And then she sent me a very short passage of the email that she had received from the shaman. And what I read confirmed to me that something was off. But I didn't say anything. I wanted my client to really see it for herself. So I was just asking questions. And my client was like, oh, shit, yeah. So it's very, very important to ask, and never be afraid of asking questions, because this is your energy. This is sacred. So like I was saying, if the practitioner is pissed off because you are asking a question, or if they feel insulted, I mean, it's normal to ask questions. And asking this type of question is actually uh, an act of self-love, because you care about yourself, you care about your energy, you are aware of things. So if someone would come to me and would be like, hey, Morgan, do you, I'm interested in your session. Do you practice spiritual hygiene? How does it work? Is there a risk? I would reply to them. I would take time to reassure them. I try my best to avoid every risk possible. Then, I mean, anything can happen, because it's human nature. It's, you can only promise to do your best. You know what I mean? And that's genuinely what I'm promising when I work. And also, to come back on this client, I was like, well, can you ask the shaman to check, or do something? And the other practitioner didn't really do anything for my client. My client managed to deal with it herself, and then we had to go in another session, because there was really severe attack. Like that was a mess.
So what actually happened there? What during the soul retrieval?
What happened, because I remote viewed what the other shaman did, and she got respectfully saying this, I'm just describing what I saw, and my client confirmed this, because she had been feeling very bad after. So when I was asking her question, that was resonating with her. I'm like, oh, I feel that. Does that resonate? And she was telling me yes. It's not like, oh, this, because I always try to exchange. And so I was remote viewing, and I'm like, okay, so she reintegrated a little child, and then a teenager, and then she was saying that she reintegrated spirit animals in the energy. Like, normally that kind of shocked me. And then I'm like, what she reintegrated was not your inner child. That was an entity pretending to be your inner child.
Ooh.
And as she didn't cleanse the inner child / entity, it couldn't be dissolved. So she entered the entity in the heart of my client. So there was this entity inside of her, and that was entity plus some little parasites on top of that. So that was really that happened last week, actually. And to be honest with you, that was intense. I spent a lot of time cleansing that, because my client was attacked, and I always take a lot of precaution: shield the house, shield the room, shield myself, bounce, go in a space somewhere, take 1,000 precautions. And I was attacked like almost never before. I knew what it was, so I didn't freak out. I'm just like, okay, let's deal with that. But it's just like opening a can of worms. So it's just like, hey, pushing everything back here and there. So stay calm. Everything was fine. So that's why it's very, very important to cleanse the fragment you are going to reintegrate, because you don't want. I always say, would you allow someone in your house who has been running in the mud? No, you would just tell them, take your shoes off, or go and take a shower, or whatever, cleanse yourself, and then you enter the house. It's exactly the same with a soul fragment. You don't want to reintegrate like dirty, quote unquote, dirty energy into your energy. So I always shield before going into the soul retrieval, for example. Shield, cleanse, go, take the soul fragment, cleanse the soul fragment, shield, reintegrate, cleanse the two again, shield again, and then come out.
Wow.
And of course, asking the client, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Like, did you feel a shift? Is there, really talking? And it's good as well, because it makes them become more aware of their body, their bodily reaction, their goosebumps, or if something feels off in the solar center, or all this kind of if you notice a thought that is not aligned, let me know.
Mm.
So that I really take this seriously, because it's like I said, there is nothing to fear, because everything that was done can always be undone. But once again, an example I always say: would you take the risk of running across the highway by foot? You wouldn't. You wouldn't want to create problem for yourself, just like you look left and right before you cross the road. Not because you are permanently afraid of being run over by a car. It's just common sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a doctor who is going to see a patient, they wash their hands. Common sense. So spiritual hygiene for me is just common sense. You know, we all have an energetic imprint, and I'm really, really careful to really cleanse after each session, because I take responsibility for my energy, and I take people's energy very seriously as well, and being aware of the tricks they can play. And that's why I'm always big about, I always say, you cannot be a light worker if you don't know about the shadow.
That's true.
Because we need to be whole. And it's not from a place of giving them attention. It's just from a place of neutrality. I want to know the enemy, quote unquote enemy, because I want to know what I'm facing and what I can do to face it. Not from a place of, like I'm going to smash them, just from a place of, okay, stand in my power, make my client or whoever I'm working with stand in their power. There is nothing to fear. You are always in control. You are sovereign, empowered. This is something very, very important. I always want to empower humans and stand in their power.
What is the craziest thing you've ever seen working with a client and clearing entities?
Wow. Last week, what I just talked about regarding last week was one of the craziest thing. Dealing with some demons that don't want to leave and who are literally like this. Well, this is how I see them. Someone else might see them differently. You know, we all have our symbolism and our ways to see them, or sometimes you hear them, but literally seeing this not very pleasant looking creature with giant claws and big teeth and drool and blood injected eyes. Like I said, that's the image that I saw. Holding on to a client, not wanting to leave, screaming so hard that my client himself heard the creature scream.
Wow.
That was crazy. What else? Some types of implants. Sometimes I remove. One day I removed. There were parasites. So parasites are little strange creatures that look like all kinds of weird animals that we don't really know. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but there was like slug type creatures basically in the stomach of the person, so etheric, obviously. And I removed them and I traced them. They were linked to beings on a ship that was under military surveillance because the person in question was a victim of military targeting.
Wow.
So that was that. Some encounters with Lucifer, like I was explaining, or different types of. I have so many stories, and just
Is
right
there an
now
increase right now in these attacks? Is it because we're raising our vibration, or what's the cause of that?
Last week was crazy, honestly. I've worked with clients who have been going through a lot of attacks. People I know, like friends or family, and even other facilitators have been going through a lot of attacks. Because, like you rightly said, we are increasing our vibration, and there is this will to feed themselves and to open certain old timeline to destroy humanity. And also Halloween is coming. And as you know, Halloween is a time of rituals and sacrifices and things like that. So I'm not going to go into more details because that's really dark and not very pleasant. But let's say that around Halloween, we all know that the veil is very thin, right? So that's always a period of time where attacks are more prone to happen. And especially in time of spiritual warfare, like we are under. No need to say more about that.
Yeah.
You get what I mean. So yeah, it's been very intense. Yeah. So
Now, let's say, like I have a really good friend or a spouse or a sister that is not awake yet or on the spiritual path. How might I detect if they have some sort of negative attachment or negative entity?
okay, so there are some signs and symptoms. Some of them can be like, for example, outburst of rage, disproportionate reaction. And I'm not saying it's always the case. I mean, sometimes it's something else, but I'm just giving some of the examples, example of symptoms. Sometimes gaslighting is also because of an entity that is taking over. So yes, it can be because of, you know, narcissistic behavior and things like that. But sometimes there is, let's say, there is an attachment to the human in question, and their consciousness switches, and they have no remembrance of the switch that happens. And I noticed that a lot of light workers, when they were children, had a caretaker switch, be abusive, switch back, be an angel. And when later the child grew up and tried to confront or mention some episode to the parent or caretaker in question, they would deny, because they genuinely don't remember. And this is something I have experienced myself. The family member in question has no remembrance of being like that. So it's just like sometimes the dark side will take over and switch for a minute. So be aware of the mood swings, of depressive state. And like I say, it's not always demonic. Sometimes just an attachment that is there and just needs to be released, you know, or a deep wound or something like that. So the human in question, it's not their fault. I mean, it's their responsibility, but it's not their fault. You know, always be really caring and not feeding the energy. Like I remember in 2011, I was still working for the company I was working at, and my coworker suddenly lost his shit like that.
Wow.
And he was so much taller and stronger than me. Like he could have smashed me against the wall like nothing. And he became so crazy, and you could feel that he wanted to, you know, wanted confrontation. And I switched, because I was about to get up and tell him, well, listen, you know, defend myself. But something like my higher self took over, and I realized what was happening. So I was like, listen, I know what you want. I'm not going to go there. So I'm not paid to undergo your mood. Go and get yourself a cup of coffee. Do whatever you want. I don't want to deal with that right now. Leave me alone. And he was literally not expecting that. So he was like this towering above me. So I was sitting down and he was towering. Then he switched, and he actually went in the kitchen and made himself a cup of coffee. So because he was not expecting that. So if you react with the opposite vibration, then the human doesn't know what to do, and what is attached to the human doesn't know how to respond to that, because they see that you're standing in your power. And I'm very grateful for this experience, because I had been bullied all my life, and that day I chose to stand up for myself. And since then, I haven't had that pattern anymore. So I broke a pattern. And that's why I will always say the dark side always, always uses your wounds against you. So when you know yourself, when you know your trauma, you can be like, oh, thanks for using this against me. Now I know what to heal, because then you close the door. Next time they cannot use this against you because you have healed that.
That's so
Does that make
perfect.
sense?
So perfect. You had also mentioned remote viewing. Now, is that something, could somebody with a nefarious agenda do to you without your permission?
If they infringe the universal laws, yeah, they can do that.
Wow.
Yeah. But once again, nothing to fear, because we are sovereign and we have the power. But yeah, so it's just tapping into the energy, like I was explaining for the client in question. I was just rewinding the timeline, basically. And because I had my client's permission, I was there to help her. But that's not something I'm just doing for myself without permission. This is just something that I use for sessions, like when we visit another timeline, or always with the purpose of healing a pattern or a wound or trauma or something. But yeah, it's
so if you suspect that somebody that may have some sort of attachment to them is remote viewing you, is there a way to stop them from like getting in your space?
Yes, you can do that. You can place psychic protections, and also go in the astral or Akashic records, or and see if there is a contract with this person in question. If it's someone you suspect, like if it's an imbalance from a past life, or try to investigate, like feel, channel what's coming up, and not allow that. Stand in your power. I do not consent. I do not consent. I do not consent 3 times.
That seems to be the running theme for all of it. Just don't allow it. Stand in your power and keep vibing high.
Exactly, vibing high while always doing the work. We don't want to be like, oh, I'm all love and light. Oh, the dark side doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Because this is bypassing, and I'm not about that. It's just, there is this side, there is this side. I'm here, and I'm using both for my growth. It's not about reintegrating the shadow. It's about healing it, and really looking at it without judgment, without fear, just observing, becoming the observer of yourself, basically.
So beautiful. Now, Morgane, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what kind of services do you offer, and where can they find you? I will also put links below for people, but if you want to let everybody know, that'd be great.
Thank you so much. So I have my website, morganeolivia.com, and I offer shamanic healing, entity removal. I offer also what I call soul realignment. So we go in the Akashic records and we observe to go to the root of a pattern or a contract or something. So sometimes it's a soul retrieval that is needed. Sometimes you just need to bring peace to a relationship, or cut some cords, break some contracts. So really having the perspective of the higher perspective from the soul's perspective. So we tap into that. I also have some ancestral healing. I recently created an 8-week program to really accompany client. So it's like 6 sessions, 8 weeks of support. And it's very important for me to mention that the unlimited support I provide is not to make someone dependent on me.
Right.
I don't want that. No. I'm here. If you have a situation, you have unlimited support, so we can deal with it together. I'm helping you keep it together, giving you hints on which question to ask yourself in case of overwhelming moment, or so that then you know how you can create new habits within yourself. So then you have all the tools within you. I'm just showing you the tools that you already have within you. and then you can deal with it yourself when we finish working together, because you are empowered. So this is very, very important for me to mention. It's not that I want to make people dependent on me. It's just that I am here to hold space and make you fly high, make you remember who you are. That's really important.
That is the key, most definitely.
Yeah, it is, because I've worked with coaches and healers who just want the money. I mean, that was my experience. I'm not saying everyone is like that, don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about the experience that I had as a student myself many years ago. You just see that some coaches just want the money, and then once they have the money on their bank account, then you just bye, they literally left. Okay, so it's very important, because it's something that is not really spoken about, healing journey, energy, and things like that. So if you let someone who is really going through healing their trauma, having the courage to look at their wounds and say, I'm going to heal that, it's admirable. And I really want to offer a safe space. They know they're not going to be judged. They know they are safe. It's very important, because I was shamed. I was forced to talk about my trauma while I wasn't ready by a Reiki master, which created another trauma on top of the trauma. Very, very delicate. So, and in a sense, I'm grateful for this experience, because now I know what not to do. Because when you are talking about a physical abuse that you underwent, and someone is like, talk about it. If you don't talk about it, it means you don't want to heal it. So if you don't want to heal it, then you're just going to stay like that all your life. No, it doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. Yeah. You talk about it to me if you feel comfortable. If you come to me and say, well, listen, I have some trauma, I just want to heal. Would you like to share? If not, we'll just work intuitively, and it's all good, So this is very, very important. And I used to have, at the very, very beginning, I was doing Reiki. I had this lady. I was going to her place every Wednesday at 2 p.m. She was in my area. And she was like, I have a heavy trauma, but I cannot talk about it. It's all good. No worries. We'll just work with energies. And to this day, I still don't know what her trauma was. However, weeks after week, she was opening up more and more. And even if I still don't know the trauma, I have an idea of what it was. But when she was opening up more, I wasn't being like, oh, you see, you're starting to tell me. I didn't say anything. I was just letting her talk and letting her release and holding space. You cannot force someone to talk about something they're not ready to talk about, And it's all good. Everyone is where they need to be, and it's perfect as it is, because they are doing the work. So that's very respectable.
Oh, Morgane, you have such a beautiful head on your shoulders. Very smart lady.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here and sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm very honored to have been on your show.
All right. Thank you, my dear. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.